SS Hewitt, 1914 to 1921. Hewitt, Part 1. Construction and short career as Pacific. In 1914, Hewitt was built by the Four River Shipyard Company in Boston, Massachusetts. On August 4, 1914, Hewitt was launched. The ship had a length of 128 meters. In September of 1914, Hewitt was commissioned. Hewitt began her career serving as a bulk freighter for the J.S. Emery Steamship Company under the name Pacific. Pacific would serve for the J.S. Emery Steamship Company for only 1 year. Hewitt, Part 2. Career as Hewitt. In 1915, Pacific was purchased by the Union Sulfur Company. Once purchased, the ship was renamed Hewitt. Hewitt continued serving her intended role as a bulk freighter along the east coast of the United States. On August 9, 1917, during the First World War, Hewitt was requisitioned by the United States Navy. After being requisitioned, Hewitt was tasked with transporting sulfur and iron ore to several European ports. During this time, the ship was equipped with a 15-centimeter gun to defend against potential U-boat attacks. By installing the 15-centimeter gun, Hewitt became the first American merchant vessel to be fitted with one. Despite this precaution, no war-related incidents were reported on board Hewitt. On February 26, 1919, after the end of the First World War, Hewitt was returned to the Union Sulfur Company. The ship then continued to operate as a bulk freighter between ports in the Gulf of Mexico and in the east coast of the United States. In October of 1920, Hewitt was dry docked for an overhaul, which lasted 45 days. After the overhaul, Hewitt was inspected and certified by the Steamboat Inspection Service. Little did anyone know that despite the certification, Hewitt would soon become one of the greatest maritime mysteries at sea. Hewitt, Part 3. Final Voyage. On January 20, 1921, Hewitt departed Port Arthur, Texas, bound for Portland, Maine, with a stopover in Boston, Massachusetts. Onboard Hewitt during this voyage were 42 crew members. Under the command of Captain Hans Jakob Hansen, the freighter was carrying a cargo of approximately 7,900 tons of sulfur. Throughout the voyage, Hewitt sent out regular radio messages which reported her current location. On January 25, 1921, Hewitt sent out another radio message, which reported that the ship was currently sailing 460 kilometers north of Jupiter Inlet, Florida. Little did anyone know that this would be the final time anyone would ever hear from Hewitt. Hewitt, Part 4. A Mysterious Disappearance. On January 29, 1921, after Hewitt failed to arrive on time at her stopover of Boston, the Union Sulfur Company sent a radio message to the freighter asking for her current location. On January 30, 1921, after the ship failed to respond, the Union Sulfur Company alerted the United States Coast Guard about Hewitt's overdue status. What followed next was an extensive search for Hewitt that lasted until mid-February of 1921. A large search was launched in the general area where it was believed Hewitt was sailing. However, nothing was ever found. Hewitt and her 42 crew members had vanished without a trace. Hewitt, Part 5. Theories. After failing to find any survivors, bodies, or debris from Hewitt, many investigations were launched to determine what may have happened to the ship and all of her crew members. During the investigations, several theories were suggested as to what may have happened to the doomed freighter. Theory 1. Piracy. One theory suggested that the ship had been hijacked and robbed by pirates. However, no real evidence of this theory has ever emerged, and no suspected pirates were ever caught. Theory 2. Hurricanes. As the investigations continued, it became clear that Hewitt was not the only ship that had been reported missing. A total of 4 other ships had also disappeared without a trace in the same time period and in the same general location as Hewitt. Those 4 missing vessels were SS Esperanza de Larinaga, SS Monte San Michele, SS Ottawa, and the schooner Carroll A. Deering. Between January and February of 1921, strong hurricanes ravaged the Atlantic Ocean. The hurricanes were so severe that the crew members of the steamers SS Victorieux and SS Bombardier had to abandon their ships in the fear of them sinking. It is likely that Hewitt and the other missing ships had been caught in the hurricanes and sank within seconds. This would have given the crew members on board the missing ships no time to send distress messages. Hewitt, nor any of those 4 missing ships have ever been found. Except for one. Theory 3. Connection with Carroll A. Deering. On January 31, 1921, a 5-masted schooner washed ashore at Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. However, due to the poor weather conditions, it would take another 4 days for rescue crews to approach and board the schooner. On February 4, 1921, after the weather had briefly subsided, rescue crews approached the grounded schooner. The rescue crews soon discovered that it was the Carroll A. Deering, one of the several ships that had gone missing. The rescue crews discovered that the ship had been badly damaged. The Deering's 2 lifeboats, navigation equipment, and logbook were also missing. It was also discovered that the schooner's distress signals on her rigging had been lit. Most striking of all, however, was that all of the Deering's crew members were nowhere to be found on board. After analyzing the last approximate location of each ship that had gone missing while the hurricanes were ravaging the Atlantic Ocean, it was concluded that Carroll A. Deering and Hewitt were traveling in the same general area. It is believed that the Deering's crew thought that their schooner would not survive the hurricanes. The Deering's crew then lit the ship's distress signals, gathered all their navigation equipment and logbook before boarding her 2 lifeboats and leaving the schooner. Once in the lifeboats, the Deering's crew rowed to the nearby Hewitt, who may have spotted the distress signals and made her way to Carroll A. Deering. If Hewitt did in fact pick up the crew of the Deering, they met the same mysterious fate that claimed Hewitt and her crew. Theory 4. Collision. Another possible theory suggested that Hewitt may have been involved in a collision with one of the ships that had gone missing. Because it was concluded that Hewitt was sailing in the same general area as Carroll A. Deering, it was believed that a collision occurred between those 2 ships. After the collision, the crew of Carroll A. Deering may have feared that their schooner would sink. The crew of Carroll A. Deering may have believed that it would be safer to be on board a bulk freighter than remain on board their schooner. The crew may then have lit their ship's distress signals, gathered their navigation equipment and logbook, before boarding her 2 lifeboats and leaving the schooner. Once in the lifeboats, the Deering's crew may have been picked up by Hewitt, which appeared to not have been critically damaged from the collision. Once on board, however, it may have turned out that Hewitt had actually been critically damaged from the collision, which caused the freighter to sink with both the crew of the Deering and the crew of the Hewitt. Although this was a possible theory, no evidence of a collision was found on board Carol A. Deering after she washed ashore without her crew. While it now seems unlikely that Hewitt collided with Carol A. Deering, there is still a possibility that Hewitt may have collided with one of the other ships that had gone missing. This theory was supported by reports from Coast Guard officials in Atlantic City, who claimed to have seen an explosion approximately 30 kilometers offshore on the night of February 3, 1921. The steamer Esperanza de Larinaga, who had left port the day before this reported explosion, may have collided with Hewitt, directly where the freighter's cargo of sulfur was stored. The collision may have ignited the sulfur, causing both Hewitt and Esperanza de Larinaga to blow up and sink within seconds. While this would explain the reported detonation, this theory could not be proven since no debris from this explosion was ever found. The source of this explosion has never been confirmed. Despite these four theories, no trace of Hewitt or of her crew have ever been found. To this day, Hewitt's ultimate fate remains unknown. Hewitt, Part 6. Conclusion. Whether she was involved in a collision or got caught in the hurricanes, we can gather that something went terribly wrong that caused Hewitt to sink with the loss of every soul on board. It must have been terrifying to the 42 souls on board Hewitt, knowing that their ship was sinking and that nobody was coming to their aid. Hewitt remains one of the greatest maritime mysteries at sea. Rest in peace to all those who vanished along with Hewitt in January of 1921. May they never be forgotten.